The following is an interview with my parents. They have had some strange occurrences with dreams in their lives, and I wanted to record them talking about them. There's nothing special about my family and I. We're not magic people or anything where we're super cool or this or that. I think that these kinds of experiences are actually pretty common. And if you're the kind of person who's had a strange experience with dreams, feel free to leave it in the comments section.
My sister was pregnant, and it was like at a holiday time. And she left late, and I was very tired, so I fell right to sleep. And the next morning, when she came back over, we were visiting my parents' house, and she came back over, and she said that she had run out of gas on the way home. And all of a sudden, I remembered a dream that I had right before I fell asleep, right when I fell asleep. And that was that I was trying to push a white car, and it was very easy to push. And I asked my sister, I said, was the car a lot easier to push? My sister had a white car, and I said, was the car a lot easier to push than you thought it would be? And she said, yes. And I said, I was dreaming that I was the one pushing your car, which we always thought was very kind of funny.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And now, Dad, I want you to tell about the dream where you had a business partner that you had a falling out with that didn't go so well, not a great relationship there, but he passed away and you're trying to figure out whether to go to the funeral or not.
Yeah, it was a deal where I had been in business with a guy, and we had a problem. I had started the company with your mother, and he joined us about 5 years after we started the company. And then eventually we sort of had a falling out where he wanted to buy out all of the company. I didn't want him to. It was kind of a hostile takeover. So we ended up coming to a settlement and to an agreement that he was going to buy this company over time, paying payments. But it was always a very uncomfortable thing because we basically got thrown out of our own company. And it created a lot of emotional wounds in me. For 10 years, I dreamed about being locked out of my own company and odd things like that. So anyway, about 15, maybe 17 years passed from when we had split up, and he still owed me money. And he died. He got cancer and died over a period of 4 or 5 years. He finally succumbed to it. And I was told that he had died, and so I debated on whether or not to go to the funeral, because I wanted to go because they still owed me money, but it was uncomfortable because I didn't want to go and look like I was trying to get the money. So it was an uncomfortable thing, and I sat and I prayed about it for a couple of days. And I remember it was on a Wednesday night that I came home from church, and I had a dream. And in my dream, I was attending the visitation, and it was in this giant church where there was a big line of people, and I made my way up to the front, and his widow was there, and she had on what appeared to me was a white dress, and I think she had on a black coat in my dream.
You said a black collar. A white dress with a black collar.
Could you pet that dog or something so she quits making that weird sound?
Stop,
yeah, maybe it was a black collar. I didn't remember it being that. But whatever it was either a black collar with a white coat or it was a white collar with a black coat. I think it was a black collar with a white coat. I woke up and I thought, well, I'm supposed to go to his visitation. And I went in and I talked to your mom and I said, I got to tell you about this dream I had. I said, I dreamed this, and therefore I think that I need to go to the visitation.
And I said, well, I'll go to the visitation with you, but I can guarantee you she's not wearing a white dress. The widow does not wear a white dress to a funeral.
And in the dream, I'd gone up there, and she said some things to me, like she threw herself on my shoulder and
was crying.
And I told her I was so sorry, and actually said some words like something about, we had a conversation about how hard he had fought this illness, and
yeah, you didn't want to say anything bad about him, so you said he was a hard?
No, that was me when I
I'm just telling you exactly what I remember.
Okay.
And so I had a dialogue with her in this dream. It was me having a dialogue with her boohooing and crying on my shoulder. So I think it was that evening. It was on a Thursday, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was.
We got in our car and drove down to the city where they were living. And we went in and we pulled up, and I said, wouldn't it be amazing if the dream,
If she was wearing.
if we encounter what was in my dream? She goes, yeah, it would be. And so we held hands and prayed, and then we went on in. And when we did, there was a long, long line.
And we couldn't see up to the
We
front.
couldn't
'cause
see up
line
to the
was so
front,
long.
anything. And so the line was visiting the widow, and we got about halfway up, and your mom leaned over and saw her, and she said,
I said, she is wearing a black dress with a white coat over it. So
Is
she
that what,
actually
was it a white
wearing-
dress or was it a
No,
white
it
coat?
was a black dress with a white coat over it.
She had a
but
white
it
coat.
looked-
And that's what the dream was too.
yeah,
but
exactly.
She was wearing some.
She was wearing exactly what I saw in my dream.
Yeah.
And so we made our way up there, and she saw us, and she cried, and she
Well-
threw herself onto Mom.
What happened was, he was behind me, and I was the first one, and I was thinking, I want to say something true and kind, but I want it to be true. I want to say something kind, but I want it to be true. And so I said to her,
Well, no, we worked our way up. We had to
Yeah,
wait in
we
this
had to
long
wait in
line.
this long line.
And when we got up there, she just went immediately to your mom and
well, I was before you in line.
right, and hugged you.
And I said,
Put her
to-
head
I
in
said to
Mom's
her-
shoulder.
Well, first of all, I said, he fought really hard. I said he was a very strong fighter or something like that to her. And she just started crying on my shoulder, which
Mm-hmm.
is exactly what happened to Dad in his dream.
Yeah.
And so I just hugged her, and then I went on, and I think Dad hugged her too. But I thought it was significant that I actually ended up saying to her what Dad was thinking he was going to say to her
In the dream.
in
Yeah.
the dream. Yeah. So
And the other thing, so then when we left, we left shortly thereafter. We got in the car, and I said, one thing I know from this now, I know that God knows we're here. I know that He heard every desperate cry that I had. He's aware of all the situation that happened,
all of the heartache,
all the
of
heartache and the discomfort of feeling like we were,
being robbed of our company.
taken out of our own company. And it was all okay. It was like total relief knowing that a supernatural event had happened, in my opinion, and it still is my opinion. That's just too random that any of that would be exactly like it was in my
that,
dream.
that God was in the midst of it working.
Yeah, and knew all
In spite
about
of,
it.
for us, it seemed like a giant failure. It was just God working something out in His plan
Right.
for us.
Okay, so how about with great granddad now?
All right, so my grandfather, that would be your great grandfather, got very ill in December of 1989. This is about the time that the Berlin Wall came down, and he had Parkinson's disease and got progressively bad. And we decided to go on holiday back to where Mom's from, which is many, many states away. And so I kind of said goodbye to him before I left. And we ended up, we had the three of you kids at the time. And you were a little bitty baby. And the place where my in-laws lived was a little log cabin, and it had a loft up above the stove that was down below. There was a wood stove, and we were up in an upper floor area that would get real warm up in that room. This was in the dead of winter. And so we went to sleep that night with all of us just laying on the ground. We used like sleeping bags. And we had our three little kids lying there, and she was lying there, and I was lying there, and we fell asleep. And in the middle of the night, I had a dream. And I dreamed that I was in the front of this church. I don't know what any of this dream means. And I dreamed there was this priest lady. It was like an Episcopal church, and this lady had short gray hair. She was like the priest. And she turned to me and she said, would you please say the prayer for the whole state of Christ Church? And so I began praying for, it starts off, you pray for the president and praying for all the saints, meaning believers that are here in the earth. And when I got to the end, I said these words in my dream. I said, oh, gracious Heavenly Father, so change our minds and turn our intellects that we might realize we stand in your very presence. With you, with whom you rule with the Holy Ghost, one world without end. Amen. And I woke up. I woke her up. I said, I've got to tell you this dream I had. And I'm remembering that now after, 40 years? Mm-hmm. Sitting here remembering those exact words. I might have varied them by 2 words there just a minute ago. I'm tired. But anyway, and then I woke up.
And is that some...
then we went back to bed. She goes, "Oh, that's really neat." I said, "I just wanted to wake you up to tell you so I don't forget." And then the next morning, there was this knock, knock, knock on the floor, and it was my mother-in-law knocking, your grandmother, knocking on the floor saying, "You've got a phone call. Come on down and get it." That would have been on Christmas Eve. So I got up and went down the very, very vertical stairs in this log cabin and got down and got on the phone, and it was my father crying on the phone saying that I needed to come home. He said, because he said, "Your grandfather died in the night." Mm-hmm. And I said, "Well, when did he die?" He said, "He died about 2 a.m. And that's exactly the time, if he worked it all out, that I had this dream and awoke. And it was such a unusual dream that I feel that it was a supernatural event. And I think it was the Lord telling me that my granddad was okay. He was part of the whole state of Christ Church, and that he was awaiting me in heaven. And so that was a secondary dream that I had that was very unusual in my life.
And is that a standard liturgical Episcopalian prayer? Or was
there's a prayer that's pretty standard like that. I can't recite it, but if you go and look at it, there is a prayer for the whole state of Christ Church. But the part about the end was not. That came about change our hearts and turn our intellects. That's not in there.
Yeah.
And I remember that even till today. And that's a message to us. We need to let our hearts be changed and turn our intellects, get our mind coupled with our emotion to trust and have confidence in God.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I want the viewers to hear the story where a friend of ours passed away, and Dad, you were supposed to pray. You couldn't find the words.
I'll let Mom tell the story.
Okay. Yeah, let me tell the story.
That's why
I was in law school at the time.
So, Dad was in law school.
And it was a fellow student.
One of the students that were in his study group asked him to come to lunch with her because she had a problem that she wanted him to pray with her about. So he went off to work, and this was before you were born, and I had your brother and sister, your older brother and sister, and so they were about a year apart. So I would put them in the bed with me, and we would take a nap all together. So that's what I had done, and as I was lying there trying to fall asleep, because you guys, the two of them had already fallen asleep, this poem kept coming into my head, and it was just really weird. And so I finally wrote it down. I had some paper there by the bed, and I finally wrote this poem down. So everything, the rest of the day went along fine, and then finally when you're
Can you share what the poem was now, or do you want to wait till later in the story?
I can share it now. I don't,
yeah.
No, I'll share it at the end, because it's more appropriate at the end. So the rest of the day went fine, and so then Dad came home, and I thought, should I share this poem with him? I wonder if I should. I decided no, because it almost sounded like an epitaph. Okay.
Go ahead and give the poem now, because it's interesting because you don't know anything at this point.
No,
right?
I know nothing at this point.
Yeah, give the poem.
But let me finish.
Okay.
So, because it's
I'll
part
let
of
you
the
tell.
story.
It's your story.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So then I said, your friend wanted you to pray with her today. What was that all about? And he said it was so weird. You can throw that over the back of the couch.
Don't worry about it.
So anyway, he said it was just really weird. He said she's very upset because she had a sister who died when she was young, and she has never gotten over her sister's death. And she said, "Would you come with me to the grave and pray with me at this grave?" And Dad said that he went to the grave, and for the first time in his life, he could not think of the words to pray. He could not pray at this grave. And so, I said,
we both know Dad. He's never at a loss for words.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so he said, "Well, I mumbled something out, but I just couldn't feel the prayer." And it was so weird, because I felt like, this is it. Mm-hmm. If I can do this without crying. Yeah. You did this to me, son. Okay, so anyway, I said, this poem is for her. I said, this is for your friend. And see if I can do this without boo-hooing. Okay, so the poem goes, this vessel of clay lying here cold and still, it is not I. For angels have borne me into that light which mortal flesh cannot attain, and face to face I see him whom my soul loves. So do not weep for me as you pass by.
As you pass by.
As you pass by, for I would weep for you, left here alone, had he not with his gentle, nail-scarred hands wiped every tear away from my eyes. And so I had written this out, and so Dad took it to
And
his
you wrote
friend.
this out, and you didn't know anything about
No, I
this.
knew
You wondered,
nothing.
what in the world am I
Yeah.
writing?
I know, I was like, what? It was just so weird when I
You
wrote
were just having
it.
a nap with your kids.
Yeah, and I thought, this is really kind of creepy, actually,
Yeah.
you know. But I gave the poem to him, and he gave the poem to her, and it really ministered to her.
And she
so-
remembers it today. We visit her once or twice a year. She remembers it word for word.
So why do you think God chose to give the message to Mom instead of you, Dad?
Because I think that God was trying to show me that when two people get married, as he has said, they become one. And even when they have their separate lives and their separate
Friendships.
problems and their separate worlds, God was showing me that he connects the man and the wife. He's the one who it's a spiritual connection that we cannot understand, because my world was totally separate from Dad's. He was at law school. He was running a business.
She was changing diapers and feeding
yeah,
kids.
and I was taking care of the home, you know.
Allow me to
But-
be the rabbi for a moment. So
Yes.
imagine this story from the other person's point of view. Mm-hmm. Right? If the words had just come to Dad, what would it look like? You know, Dad had just thought up the prayer, right?
Absolutely, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But since God did it in such a unique way.
A weird way.
Yeah, God did it in such a unique
Such a
way.
weird way.
An unconnected way.
It made the message much more supernatural.
I don't even know if I
I
had
think
ever met
like a way
the girl
for
at that point.
the deceased sister to sign the note, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was. That really brings a lot of power into it, because I wasn't there. I didn't know the situation, and so for us to give this to this friend, and for her to realize that this was something that was not just conceived out of the moment, that this was something God directed and sent to her, a message specifically for Dad's friend.
That was that.
Yep.
Yep.
Y'all have any other weird stories? Or are you good?
I think you've just about covered them all.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
I have two stories about angels, but we'll do that on another day.
Okay. This is being released right around Easter. So I hope that it'll lead you to a closer understanding of God and the way that He wants to relate to you. I hope it'll move in your hearts and help you to take Him and your own life more seriously. And I'm going to pray right now for everyone out there who's watching this, Muslims or atheists or whoever, that God, you would just show yourselves to them, whether it's through a dream or through a friendship or an interaction. I pray there'd be more and more people turning toward you, Lord.